All right, let's talk about something we all think we get: temperature. I mean, hot is hot, cold is cold, right? Seems pretty straightforward. But what if I told you that feeling, your sense of touch, what if it's not telling you the whole truth? Seriously, just think about it for a second. That coffee mug, your phone, were you really sure how hot or cold it was? Because here's a wild thought. What if your own hands are actually lying to you? Okay, so you might be skeptical. Fair enough. Let's actually put our sense of touch to the test. Here's a super simple experiment you can totally picture in your head. Imagine 3 bowls of water. On one side, you've got hot water. On the other, ice-cold water. And right in the middle, just plain old room temperature water. So the idea is you're going to get one hand used to the heat and the other one used to the cold. And then comes the moment of truth. So you can see it here. One hand is just chilling in the cold water. The other is warming up in the hot water. They're getting used to their new normal. Then, bam! Both hands go into that middle bowl, the one with the room temperature water. Now remember, it's the exact same water for both hands. So, what do you think is going to happen? What does each hand feel? And this is where it gets crazy. The very same water feels both hot and cold at the exact same time. Your right hand, the one that was in the hot water, thinks the room temp water is freezing cold. But your left hand, fresh out of the cold water, feels that same water as being super warm, maybe even hot. So what does this tell us? The big takeaway here is that our sense of touch is totally relative. It's just not a reliable way to measure things. So if our own feelings can't be trusted, then what can we trust? This is a huge problem, right? And it's exactly why science needed a better way, a totally objective, reliable method for measuring heat. And that solution, that better way, is the concept of temperature. See, temperature isn't a feeling, it's a measurement. It's a hard number that tells us for real how hot or cold something is. It doesn't matter what our confused hands might think. And the hero of this whole story, it's this amazing little device, the thermometer. This is the tool that lets us take that physical property of heat and turn it into a number that we can all look at and agree on. No more arguments.
Okay, so we have a number, but how do we, write it down? Well, there are basically 3 main systems or scales that people use. You've probably heard of them. There's Celsius, which is used pretty much everywhere around the world. Then there's Fahrenheit, which is still used in a few countries, like the US. And finally, for all the scientists out there, the gold standard is Kelvin. But here's the thing. They're all just different languages for talking about the exact same physical reality.
All right, let's bring this home and talk about something really practical that affects all of us: measuring our own body temperature. You know the number, we've all had it drilled into our heads: 37 degrees Celsius, or if you're in the US, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like the magic number for being healthy, right? It's what we look for on the thermometer. But is it really that simple? Is it one fixed number for everyone all the time? Well, the truth is, not really. That 37 degrees, it's just an average. Your own personal normal temperature actually changes all the time. It can go up or down depending on your age. Kids tend to be a bit warmer, or even the time of day. Just ran up a flight of stairs? Yep, your temperature changes. So it's much more of a range than one specific magic number. And, the tools we use to measure it have gotten way more advanced. I'm sure we all remember during the pandemic, these non-contact infrared thermometers were suddenly everywhere. They're incredible because they can get a reading without ever having to touch you. Talk about a great innovation for keeping things clean and safe. But of course, it's not all about checking for fevers. We need to measure temperature for all sorts of things. And that brings us to the kinds of tools you'd find in a proper science lab. So that makes you wonder, right? If you've got a fancy lab thermometer sitting around, why couldn't you just use that to check if you have a fever? I mean, a thermometer is a thermometer. Or is it? What's the real difference here? Well, the answer is all about specialization. Think of it this way. A clinical thermometer is like a specialist. It's incredibly accurate, but only for a very, very narrow range of temperatures. Basically, the range a human body can be. A lab thermometer, on the other hand, is a generalist. It's built to be versatile. It can handle a huge range, from way below freezing at -10 Celsius, all the way up past boiling to 110 degrees. And using one of these lab thermometers correctly is absolutely key to getting an accurate reading. There's a proper technique. First, you have to get your eye perfectly level with the top of that liquid line, no looking up or down at it. And, this is super important, You have to read the number while the bulb is still in whatever you're measuring. The second you pull it out, that reading is going to start to change, and your measurement will be wrong. Okay, so this whole thing isn't just for doctors and scientists in white coats. Let's talk about how measuring temperature is totally crucial in our everyday lives. Once you start looking for it, I promise you'll see it everywhere. That thermostat on your wall that keeps your room from being too hot or too cold, that's measuring temperature. The weather report you check on your phone every morning to decide if you need a jacket, that's all about temperature. Every single one of these things depends on having a reliable, objective way to measure it. And behind all these things we take for granted, there are some truly brilliant people. People like Anna Mani. She was an incredible Indian physicist and meteorologist, often called the Weather Woman of India. She and her team designed and built hundreds of different weather instruments. Her work was absolutely essential for making accurate weather forecasting even possible in India. And there's this fantastic quote from her that just perfectly sums up everything we've been talking about. She said, "It is better to do no measurement than to do a wrong measurement." And that just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It shows exactly why having the right tools and using them correctly is so important. Because if you're gonna measure something, you have to get it right.
So let's recap. We've seen why you literally can't trust your own hands. We've looked at the amazing tools we invented to get around that problem. Tools that let us accurately measure the temperature of our bodies, our homes, and even the weather all around us. Which leaves us with one last, kind of mind-blowing question. We can measure water and air, but how in the world do you measure the temperature of a star?